How to change when change is really hard. If you're like myself or most people that I know, when you decide you need to change something, it can be challenging. We know what we want to do, whether it's we want to grow this mortgage business, whether we need to end a relationship, start a relationship, have that big conversation that we know we need to have and putting off, but we don't do it. And one of the things that I've been studying a lot lately is how do we effectively change? So how do you decide that I was doing this thing and now I want to do this other thing? Hey, I'm Scott Peckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And each week we bring you episodes that are tactics to help you with your mortgage business. This week is more of a mindset focused, but I've been doing some mindset calls with a bunch of brokers and absolutely loving it. And I thought this would be a good topic for today. Before I jump into it, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Omwell. Omwell is an amazing tool for Canadian mortgage brokers. It allows them to engage their database. It helps clients see their home equity and their buying power. It's very powerful and it creates tons of conversations. The open rate 60 to 80%. Check them out at omwell.ca. All right, so let's talk about change. Like change is something that most of us go, there's things I'd like to change. It's a new year. Apparently January 17th is Quitter's Day, which means that all of the New Year's resolutions that were started on January 1st, most people have already quit by now. And so there is this innate desire for us to change things, but we often struggle, myself included. And so I'm just going to share with you some tactics that I have applied successfully in my life, and hopefully you'll find them useful. And I'll give you some resources that you can go check out if you want to dive into this more. So there's a fantastic book written called Change or Die. It's got this red cover on it. And in the book, one of the premise of the book is that people don't change. Even the threat of death will not necessarily make people change. And they tell about this study that was done on people who had angioplasty, where they had to do this work on their heart. And at the end of it, the doctor said to them, look, if you don't change your habits, your eating, your movement, this is going to kill you for sure. And 80% of people go right back to their default setting very quickly, even though we've given them the information, there's the threat of death. And then there was another group that had the opposite effect. The other group had an 80% success rate in this study, 80% success rate in maintaining these new positive habits, changing the diet, changing the movement. And so what did that other group do? So whenever you see something like this, you go, okay, so what did group A do that group B didn't do? And what they did with the second group is they did a twice a week meeting where they would get together with these folks and they would basically work together in a small group and talk about and learn those activities, learn what they needed to be doing. And they only did it for 1 year. But then 3 years later, 80% of the people were still following the same diet and pattern. And it's because they had an identity shift. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But that happens. We change best in community better than we do by ourselves. It's very difficult to change on your own. I read something James Clear said the other day, and he said something to the effect that you change your peer group to the kind of people that you want to be. You start hanging around with people. So for instance, you want to exercise and eat healthier. You start hanging around with those people. Guess what? That's going to happen. You're going to naturally do it. Conversely, if you have a bunch of friends that are out partying all the time, spending all their money at the casino, and you start hanging out with them, guess what? You are going to be the average of those folks. And so peer group change is very, very powerful. We are social creatures. We are herd animals, if you will, and we're absolutely influenced by our peer group. And so so that was a big thing that I took away from that book, Change or Die, was this idea that we change best in community. We change much better than we do all by ourselves by sitting, and hoping and wishing and that we're going to actually change. It's likely not going to happen. When you normalize that change and you see it becomes it just becomes the default mode in the way of being. So it's the first thing, you change best in community. The second thing, as I already alluded to, is permanent change comes from identity change. And so identity is who you believe you are. And so we all have identities. And I've done a lot of thinking and reading and studying on identity because like Tony Robbins talks about this. Some of the best coaching I've ever taken in my life has been with coaches who helped me work on my identity. Because if you change the identity, everything changes, right? What you believe about yourself. But then it's like, well, then how did I create my identity? Because most of us, our identities were created by accident, not on purpose. And so here's how I think about it. And so there's this great model in NLP where they talk about if there's something you're not doing, it's like if you're not getting a result you want, it's probably a story that you're telling yourself. It's not actually like you go way past. It's not like the outcome is the result of a story. And so this is how this works. It goes, the story I tell myself, right, affects how I feel, my emotion. My emotion affects my action, and my action affects my result. And so if you're not getting the result you want in life, whether it's I'm not doing the calls, I'm not doing the exercise. I'm not doing the diet. It's because of an underlying story that you believe. And the stories, by the way, some of them are really easy. They're obvious. And some of them are insidious. And they were given to us by our parents. Not my parents loved me. They did the best they could. They gave me these stories that I now have to unpack and I have to let go of and say, this is not helping me. This is not a story for me anymore. And one of the stories I've shared this before is that, so I grew up in a fairly religious home. And so there was my mom loved me like crazy. And I always say, like, if I said to my mom, I wanted to be a bank robber, she would say, you're going to be the best bank robber. She was so encouraging. So I guess in a sense, she built this identity in me that I believe I can do anything, even if I can't. I have this, well, how hard can it be? Turns out some things are way harder than I thought, but I have this internal bias. So that was a fantastic identity piece that I believe I picked up from her. But one that I had to work through was that my mom, so growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. And so I remember my mom would read me these Bible stories. And one of them was about the rich fool. And in it, this guy basically steals money from all these people, puts all of his grain, and then he thinks I'm going to live a great life. And then he dies at the end of the story. And I'm like, oh. And so I had this underlying story, and it took some time to unpack that making money was money equaled evil. So it wasn't how you made the money. It wasn't what you did with the money. It was that money was evil. And therefore, the first time I made more money as a mortgage broker in a month than I made in a year as a paramedic, I actually my business was like, I went off the rails. So I was like, oh my gosh, I can't, because I had this identity crisis. It did not feel like I had an incongruency, a cognitive dissonance, as they say. And it led to me having and I had to work through that. By the way I changed that was joining a peer group where that was normalized. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not, that was one of the big things that happened. I had to unpack this. So the identity comes from this idea that the story we tell ourselves. So if I believe money is evil, then my underlying emotion is money is bad. Therefore, if I create actions that create money, I'm not going to be a happy camper. You can see that, right? I'll give you a more basic one. If you believe that real estate agents are terrible and they're fickle, then what is your underlying emotion? You're going to be like, you're going to think, I don't want to talk to them. And then your actions are going to reflect that, and then your results. Versus if the right realtors help me feed my family, and I love working with the right realtors, that underlying story leads to a positive emotion, which leads to a positive action, which leads to a better result. So I want to unpack all that because identity is a piece of this story. So for me, the way I think of identity is the stories we tell ourselves are become standards. So these stories can be good or bad, and you can change them. They're not permanent. And so these stories we tell ourselves repeated enough times become a standard. And a standard that's repeated becomes an identity. So the story I tell myself right now, so I lift weights. I've been lifting weights consistently for 15 months. And I have a workout program and I follow it. And I now have an identity of I lift weights, right? Prior to that is, people say things like, I'm going to try to, it's not your identity yet. So because I had done enough of the actions repeatedly over time that it became an identity shift. The identity shift now makes the change far more stronger, far more permanent. And so if you want to change, one of the best things you can do is you've got to work on your identity. And working on your identity means peeling back the layers and going, what stories do I believe that aren't serving me? Is it true? And some questions you can ask, is it true? Is it really true? Because there's stuff that we believe is true that's not. I love Alex Hormozy will say to someone, they'll say, well, I can't have a successful business because insert whatever excuse. And he goes, you're right. He just pauses. You're right. And they go, oh. And usually people feel like it's like getting thrown cold water in their face. And so if that's what you believe, you're right. And then you're going to live out the actions of that, or you could choose something else and you get to decide. And so these things are not fixed. We think they're fixed. They're not. And so identity work is a very powerful thing. I've read a great book called The Alter Ego Effect. It's a way to leverage aspects of your personality or your identity that you want to develop. I could talk for hours about this, but I'm not going to get into that today. But so essentially, if you want to change something, so the purpose of this podcast, change peer groups is the first one. Change your peer group. You will change your behavior. Which will then lead to a permanent change in identity over time, right? Which is the second thing you want to do is you want to create change over time. And the third tactic, this is a newer one that I picked up from a friend, and I call it Adam's rule. So my friend Adam, and so I was chatting with him, and he was saying how he was trying to come up with an accountability plan. Like him and his buddy, they're both mortgage brokers, and his buddy, they were like, "Hey, we got to do these activities." And they know what they know what they need to. We know what we need to do. Like if I asked you, how do you build your business? You know what you need to do. You probably don't want to do it, but you know it. And so what would happen is they would have this challenge with back and forth. And if whoever lost the challenge, they would owe the other guy steak dinner, but neither one of them really cared. And it was kind of like, yeah, it works, but then we drop off. And so he's like, it's not working. Being accountable to my buddy didn't work. So then what he said to me is he decided to be accountable to somebody he didn't want to let down. And in his case, it was his daughter, which is very like, okay, that's a difference, right? So this came from Sharon, the former president of Real Brokerage, and he had said to me, you need to be accountable to someone you don't want to let down. We don't, if like, for instance, people who hire a person, they go, oh, I'm going to hire a personal trainer because I'll work out. But if you don't care about the money and then you call them up and you say, hey, I'm not coming in today, you can bill me anyway. Like, there's no accountability there. You don't care. So the key is it's got to be somebody you don't want to let down. So Adam shifted from friend, they're still friends, they're wonderful friends, not the best way to have an accountability partner, to his daughter. And what he did, and I call this Adam's rule, and I'm going to share this with you because I think if you're struggling with change, here's a very simple tactic you can apply. So what he did is he said, look, I want to do these activities every day because I know it's going to drive my business. And my daughter has some things she wants to do. She's going to university. So we basically made a pact, if you will. And in that pact, he said, I'm going to send you every day an email saying I did my things. You're going to say you did your things. And at the end of the week, if we did our things, then I will take you for booster juice after hockey practice because it costs money. And then if we do it for a month, then at the end of the month, I'm going to give you put $100 on a Starbucks card. And here's the key though. So, okay, that's great. If he doesn't do let's say his daughter does it for 30 days straight every day. If he misses, she doesn't get it. She does not get the reward. So what mom would be like, I am going to let my kid down, that I'm not going to follow through on what I said. I think that the leverage, the emotional leverage you get on yourself is enormous with this. And so when he told me this, my mind was like blown. I'm like, dude, this is the coolest thing I've heard all year. I know it was only January 20th, but it is the coolest thing I've heard all year. And I think it's something that more people need to do, so that we talk about accountability, but we're not being accountable to someone that we want to let down. And we don't have a structure in place, a pact, if you will, that ensures that you are going to do everything in your power to make sure that you follow through in your commitments. So I did the same. I created something I'll share it in a future episode, but I did one with my daughter. And I said to her, same deal that Adam explained. And I said, if I don't do my thing, you are not getting the benefit. And if you don't do your thing, you're not getting the benefit. And I said to her, I will not let you down. I will not let you down, because I am not going to drop the ball on my daughter. Right? You see how powerful that is? You get this kind of leverage. You're like, ooh, this is good. So when you showed me this, I was like, mind blown. Love it. Okay, quick recap. Change is hard. We know we need to change. We know it's a new year, New Year's resolutions, all that stuff. Most of them are already dead. Forget it, scrap it. Don't forget, ignore New Year's resolutions. Instead, here's what I want you to think about. Think about your peer group. Your peer group absolutely matters. The people that you spend time with, the group you're in, are going to level you up or level you down. The second is you need to change your identity. It is not enough to just and there's a lot of stuff. I'll do some other episodes on identity work because it's so important. But the identity piece is critical. You change your identity, the change becomes far more permanent. And then the last is accountability only works if you're accountable to someone you don't want to let down. So this is my episode on New Year's resolutions don't work and what I think you should do instead. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for listening. And as I always say, if you want I got a mindset call that I've been doing every day. Some of this stuff has come up from this mindset call. We got 60, 80 brokers that show up, Mortgage Mindset Daily, and we go deep instead of wide on topics. And it has been life-giving for me and incredible. If you're interested in that, hit me up on social, click on this episode, check it out. Thanks for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.